We will now hold a public hearing of the Urbana City Council, and this is to receive public input. This is to receive public input on an ordinance approving an annexation agreement, 801 North Smith Road, for David Borchers. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ammons.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Hazen.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts. Wu. Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next on the agenda is public input, and are you Mr. Borchers?
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Okay, yeah, I'm just here to ask for annexation into the city to build a building for my construction business at 801 North Smith Road. Anybody has any questions or anything?
Any questions for Mr. Borchers? Eric.
I'll just say it's a pleasure to have someone in front of us who wishes to join us as opposed to the opposite. So thank you.
All righty.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.
Yeah, what type of construction business are you building?
It's interior construction on commercial buildings. We won't do any construction on site once the building's built.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wish to address the council in this hearing? Okay, seeing none, I will close this hearing. The meeting is and it's adjourned. And we will begin the Urbana City Council meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ammons.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Hazen.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts. Wu. Mayor Marlin.
Here. I'm going to ask that we rearrange the agenda to accommodate Mr. Ammons, who's calling in. Thank you, Aaron, for joining us. And we're going to be voting on 3 items that are appearing under the Committee of the Whole report. That's items A, F, and G. These have to relate either to budget items or liquor license vote. Because we have only 4 members physically present, we do need the 5th person who is calling in. So we're going to go, do I need to get a vote to change the agenda? Can I see a show of hands for those who approve? No? A motion to make this adjustment to the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Jared,
Second.
seconded by Eric. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay. So we will go right to the vote. If anyone wishes to provide public input on ordinance number 2017-07-040 or on the ordinance for event promotion for Imbibe Urbana or on the liquor license, please let us know. Okay. I don't have any cards. Seeing none, there's no public input on these topics. So we'll go to reports from the Standing Committee for Ordinance 2017-07-040. Dean?
Okay, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I so move ordinance number 2017-07040, an ordinance authorizing the sale of certain real estate, 1301 East Washington Street.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jared. Is there any discussion? Bill?
Yeah, I know some of us are concerned about the potential, well, almost certain loss of trees there. I know Public Works has done a really fantastic job of maintaining that lot over the past 7 years or however long we've had it, and it looks really nice now. And there's probably a dozen mature trees there along Philo Road. And I think we all understand that a Dollar General will probably necessitate removal of a lot of them, but I just urge staff to work with the company doing the construction to make sure that if any can be saved, that they are, and emphasize to them how a lot of Urbana residents feel about environmental issues, and that it would be good business to leave as many as they can. And I also noticed that the Family Dollar down the street has 42 parking spaces, and I don't think I've ever seen more than 6 cars there. So I think we might need to look at our parking requirements for these type of stores, and if we're going to require 40 spaces for this Dollar General store, it would just be a crime to see those trees cut down and have 20 spaces sit there empty concrete all the time. So maybe, you know, I'm tempted to say let's put that on the agenda next week, but I don't know what's going to be on the agenda next week. But I'd really like to look at that, and I don't know if we required those 42 spaces. I know there's one in Champaign on Bradley and Market that has 22 spaces, and they seem to get by fine with 22 spaces. The traffic isn't that much different. There's probably even more traffic up there. So let's look at that, and let's work with the company to minimize the amount of parking required there and try to save those trees, as many trees as possible. I think one of those is actually a tulip poplar, and I read that tulip poplars are especially good at phytoremediation of contaminated groundwater. Since this was a SRP site, Illinois EPA site that was watched because it had some petroleum products, I guess, in the soil. So, you know, that tree's been there for a long time. Who knows? The soil's probably in pretty good shape because of those trees, or, you know, it's coming back anyway. So that sort of thing I think would go a long way with the community if they could, you know, if they could benefit the community more. I also noticed that Dollar General, and in general, Dollar General is looking more toward trying to increase their fresh produce and fresh offerings. And there's a Dollar General market concept now, and some smaller Dollar Generals for more urban areas. So hopefully we could also emphasize how well that would go over. I think having more fresh produce and meat and produce there is something that's really needed, especially with the county market gone. So I look forward to working with the developer of that, and I want the staff to really take this serious and try to work with them on making that a good site.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay.
The Family Dollar down the street has a big clearance sign. Does anyone know if that's just a clearance sale, or is there some sort of anticipation for closing that store?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ammons,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin.
Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Next up is item F on your list, which is ordinance number 2017-07-041. Dean?
Okay. On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I so move this item. Do you need me to repeat it?
You can read the item.
Okay. Ordinance number 2017-07-041, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance for fiscal year 2017-18 downtown event promotion.
And this was for funding for Imbibe Urbana First Friday. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
It was moved by Dean, seconded by Eric. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ammons,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin.
Yes. That motion passes. And last is ordinance 2017-07-042, which is the ordinance amending the liquor code, which is just changing the designation for the class liquor license for Lumen. And Dean.
Um,
Oh, Jared, I'm sorry.
I have to recuse myself from this item. To pursuant to Illinois state liquor law.
Thank you. Mr. Hazen?
Okay, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing number of Class R1 liquor licenses for Lumen Incorporated, 300 South Broadway Avenue, Unit 142, Urbana, Illinois, 61801.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Dean, seconded by Eric. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ammons,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ammons. Okay, we will go back to our regularly scheduled meeting. To the approval of the minutes from previous meetings of July 17th and July 24th, which was a public hearing. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Jared. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Eric. Any corrections? Bill?
I just had one minor one on the July 17th minutes. Item F1 has Jared marked as recused, and then says carried by roll call vote 7-0. So I think his was an I or an A.
Depending on if you're Mary Alice.
Did you get that, Charlie?
It was item F1,
A. F1A.
F1A, sorry.
It says Miller was recused.
Right, Miller recused should be I.
Okay. Any other corrections? All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. Any additions to the agenda? Okay. Public input, I have one card from Bishop King James Underwood, who continues to be concerned about the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problems. And then I have a public input from Eldris Melinda Carr. Did you wish to speak? You can come up now. And she wishes to discuss the Ellis subdivision sewer issues.
Good evening, everyone.
Speak
Eldris
into the
Melinda
microphone,
Carr.
please.
Can you hear me? Eldris Melinda Carr,
Thank you.
1308 West Tremont Street, Urbana. And I wanted to, three things. The first thing is that I received correspondence from Brad Bennett regarding the August 14th meeting, which will deal with an item on the sanitary sewer lateral pavement reimbursement program update. And so that meeting was rescheduled 3 times, and I won't be able to attend the meeting on the 14th because I'll be out of town that week. And so the second thing is related to that. So still concerned about the proposed updates and that document that don't feel like the inequity is addressed there. So I wanted to bring that forward today since I won't be there next week. And then we still plan to provide additional information as was indicated at a previous meeting that I spoke to, saying that we would like to bring some information forward. So that's basically what I wanted to say, is because I won't be able to be here on the 14th, and I received correspondence, and it's unfortunate because it was rescheduled 3 times, and I had already made plans for an out-of-town trip for a family member who's ill. So that's all I needed to say.
Eric?
So their question for staff, since Eldris Carr has consistently, time after time, indicated her interest in this issue, would anything be lost by postponing that issue yet again until a time when she would be in town?
Bill Gray?
No, we would like to accommodate you and anybody else interested. So the reason for the postponements was always someone was not available or ill or what have you. So with you being out of town, we'll try to reschedule with you and the Reverend and see if we can reschedule a time when everyone's here.
We appreciate that.
So it's
Okay.
not
We'll do
it can be rescheduled.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other individuals wish to address the council? Okay. We don't have any unfinished business. We'll finish reports of the standing committee. Mr. Hazen?
On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I so move resolution number 2017-07046R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a promotional and marketing agreement for annual Urbana Sweet Corn Festival through the Urbana Business Association, fiscal year 2017-2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Dean, seconded by Eric. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ammons. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Hazen.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Hazen?
Okay, on behalf
That
of...
motion passes.
On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I so move resolution number 2017-07047R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a promotional and marketing agreement for, somebody help me,
Pygmalion.
Pygmalion Technology Conference, fiscal year 2017-2018.
I'll second.
Moved by Dean, seconded by Eric. Any discussion?
That would be Jared.
Jared.
Jared? I was thinking Jared and I said Eric.
We're kind of twins.
Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Hazen.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Dean?
On behalf of Committee of the Whole, I so move resolution number 2017-07048R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a promotional and marketing agreement for 2017 Champaign-Urbana Folk and Roots Festival. Champaign-Urbana Folk and Roots Festival, fiscal year 2017-2018.
Second?
Second.
That would be Dean and Eric, seconded. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Hazen.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Dean?
On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I so move resolution number 2017-07049R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a promotional and marketing agreement for monthly Urbana First Friday festivals, Imbibe Urbana, LLC, fiscal year 2017-2018.
I'll second.
I'll just make a comment that anybody who missed this last Friday with the fire dancers and the wrestlers, you missed something wonderful.
Was that seconded by Jared? Okay. Any other comments, discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Hazen.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
That resolution passes. Last on your list is 2017-07-045R.
Okay, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I so move this resolution adopting City Council and Committee rules, the revised version.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Eric. Any further discussion? Bill?
So this was a version that we just had on our desks today, is that?
No,
Oh, that's something else.
this
Okay.
is the
Mayor.
other one. Charlie?
No, actually, there is a correction to page 5 of that where in section 3, move the except as provided in section 2 of this resolution to the front of the sentence and changed an is to an as.
Okay.
So There's a little typo there.
So do we need to amend or accept
Dean
this?
Dean made the motion to include this correction.
Okay. All right. Any further comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
That resolution passes. Thank you very much. Reports of special committees. Okay. Reports of officers. Chief Morgan wanted to provide some information about pedestrian stops in response to questions that were raised at the meeting 2 weeks ago. And there's a memorandum on your desk as well.
Yes, so I put some handouts in front of you, and one of them is what I put up on the screen so that others can see what we're talking about. The memo is something that we gave out to patrol officers once this change came into effect, because it's a very complicated concept, and one of the biggest challenges we had when the pedestrian stop law came into effect was that they defined what a detention was, which was quite different from what a police officer believes to be a detention. So that's one of our biggest challenges, was to try to make this put it in a format so that the officers could understand something a little differently than what the legislature kind of wanted it to be. So when we stop an individual, as we start on the left side of the page there, you're going to have contact with somebody in a public place, and then you kind of go from there. Was it a traffic stop? Well, we already know that we report this traffic stop data on IDOT stickers on the back of the traffic tickets and all of that. That's the top part. There's also a instance where we actually, in a private residence, I mean, we've been there, called there, like on a call for service or something like that. That does not apply to this either. And then you come to the part that applies, which is it a pedestrian or someone on a bicycle, or even possibly somebody in a vehicle that wasn't a traffic stop. So sometimes we'll stop a vehicle, it's suspicious for some reason or matches a description of something, so we would stop the vehicle. Technically, that's not a traffic stop. They didn't make a traffic violation, but maybe they fit the description of a suspect vehicle or something like that. So all those types of stops would be considered a pedestrian stop. So you go to the next slide. Are they detained? That's the question. And so if you're detained, yes, then are you frisked, searched, or arrested? And if that is a yes, you see that goes over to where we have to issue a receipt. I also included one of the receipts in the information I gave you, just so you could see what those look like. We have to tell them why they were stopped, give them the officer's name and the badge number. However, if they don't want to stick around for the receipt, I mean, we don't try to detain them and force them to take it. So that's one thing that you should know. So if they're issue of them a receipt, if they were frisked, searched, or arrested, then we complete a stop sheet, which is also included in your packet, so you could see what that looked like. This is the stop sheet that has to be filled out for every single pedestrian stop that we do that meets the criteria. And then if you're in the frisk, search, or arrested box and you did not do that, any of those, then did you give them a summons, yes or no, and basically what happens from those two scenarios are up at the top as well. As far as they don't get a receipt, however, you still have to fill out the stop sheet. Now back under the detained box, if the answer is no, did you detain them? And there's a lot of reasons we would stop and talk to somebody, and they wouldn't technically be detained. They could walk away if they so choose to do that. And there's some examples listed under the bottom green box, where if we voluntarily make a contact with somebody, or they're a witness to something, or a victim, and those sort of things, that requires no receipt whatsoever and does not require an IDOT sheet, because they weren't detained under the definition of the law. So Based on the question that was asked at the last meeting, Mr. Miller said that the sergeant pulled up in her car and spoke to him from inside the car and asked him questions. That would fall under the bottom green box. She didn't get out of the vehicle. He wasn't detained in any way, and so there would be no reason for there to be any documentation of that particular interaction with a citizen. And so I wanted to answer that question. There is no documentation of that particular interaction, and I wanted to explain to you why that fell under that particular box and try to show you and give you a little information on exactly what a pedestrian stop is and what fits the criteria of the law.
Any questions for Chief Morgan? Jared?
So Chief Morgan, so the diagram, this is based off of state statutes that govern what our officers do. This is in our ordinances that...
That's correct. This is the law that went into effect January 1st of 2016 that required us to have documentation for every person that was detained in a public place. And that is kind of explained in the memo part of this. And so that's kind of what I wanted to include that, because we kind of had to explain it to the officers as well, because it was kind of a complicated thing.
Do we have any of our own ordinances that are directly related to creating any of this kind of stuff, or this is just purely what gets reported to IDOT?
So this particular diagram shows the stuff that gets reported to IDOT. It also shows the information that is not reported to IDOT. So not everything is reported to IDOT, if that makes sense. So everything we collect, not all of it is reportable. They don't care about some of the stops that we make that we collect data on. And if you look at the stop sheet, you'll see some of that information on there. So we ask all the questions that the IDOT wants to know, but we also ask a lot of other questions for our own data collection purposes. So every month I get a report that says, we had, for instance, 75 stop cards for that month, and of those, like maybe 43 were reportable, and so
By IDOT standards, but we still collected them.
correct.
Gotcha. And what happens to the other 30 some odd that weren't reportable to IDOT? Do they just stay in record, or they get?
Yes, they're in our records management system. All of
Okay.
this information that was collected on them is retrievable. It's in our records management system.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Bill?
Yeah, this is the first time I saw the receipt people get, and it's kind of nice to know why they were stopped. The breakdown of the statistics that Daryl gave us last time doesn't break out the reason for stop. I assume that's probably in the digital data you can get, but probably not in the report that they publish. So would you be able to provide us a breakdown of like how many were under each of these categories as far as the reason for stop goes? I mean, I guess at some point we'll get a report update, or...
I believe that the IDOT report does report the reason for stop. It's required for us to report that to them. And I don't know in the written report, I haven't read the entire written report. I looked at the data that was submitted, and I'm assuming there's a summary in there. We, of course, yes, can retrieve data, any of this data from records management, the records management system.
Okay. And then as far as kind of the process in general, since we've been doing it a lot longer than IDOT has required us to, would you have suggestions on how their process could be improved?
So we haven't been doing it longer than they require. We've been doing it the amount of time they required. We just collect on stops that are outside of what is reportable.
But haven't we been collecting pedestrian stop data before they required us to?
Not this data.
Oh, okay.
No.
I misunderstood that.
This detailed data here. Now, if we would stop someone, we might fill out a field interview card, and that might be in records management, but it doesn't have hardly any of this information on
Okay.
it. This very specific information. I'm sorry, was there a second part to the question? I forgot if there was.
I guess I'm trying to start to see how you view this data as far as a tool for how you can use it to improve contacts with the public, Do you see any value to it?
I think it is. I think it can be very informative on when showing like for the reasons for our stops. In fact, I mean a lot of the reasons we stop someone or, for instance, ask for consent is because of reasons outside of like if we're going to have give somebody a ride in our squad car, we would ask to search them because we don't allow people into our car without knowing they don't have weapons, for instance. That would fall under a category of a consent search, and would, but when we break that down and see why did we ask for consent, it'll show there were a majority of those were for reasons that were not, not looking for contraband necessarily. That wasn't the purpose of it. It was, for
Safety
instance,
okay.
for the safety reason or whatever. So I think that it can be very telling in some of the information that it has, and that, like I said, that's why we've collected it. I think it is valuable, and I think that's what we foresaw in last January when we decided we needed to collect more than just what the state was requiring.
Okay. And do you anticipate Melissa having a chance to not do as detailed statistics as she did for the traffic stop, but give us some summary reports on the pedestrian stop data?
I can certainly,
If she has time, or when she has time. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting. I think the one that we got, I guess the one that Durrell gave us is probably what they publish for all jurisdictions, and it's not really very easy to get a lot out of it. I'd like to just kind
Right.
of see it in a different format and talk about it, see if it helps us understand what's happening.
okay, I can certainly check with her on the
As
things on her
time
to-do
allows.
list, and we can come up with something.
Thanks.
Eric?
So I tried to do a little research on this online before this evening, and so my understanding is that I'm looking now at this crossroads, which says detained ? And at this particular point, a person presumably would be asked if they may be searched or frisked, and they may say no. But then presumably the checkboxes here would be sufficient reason to detain them even if they said no. Is that correct?
So detaining somebody and searching them are two very different things. So somebody
Okay.
could be detained, for instance, they matched the description, like I
Right.
said, that committed an offense, but maybe the offense didn't involve a weapon, so I wouldn't necessarily be going for a search of that person. But I would be talking to them. Definitely they are detained and not free to leave, and I need to ask them questions in order to determine whether or not they are the person and that
Right.
sort of thing. So so they could be detained for that reason, but the actual frisking, searching, or arresting them, by definition, is the detention. That's what the state defines as detention. And the reason we have the yes and no there, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier with the detention meaning something different to a police officer who's been doing this for years, and what the law states a detention is.
Okay, so the person is legally obligated to have this conversation. Is that correct?
If they are, yes, they are detained.
And are they legally obligated to permit a search of their person?
Only if they're arrested. Say for instance, we determine
Yeah.
this is the person, and then
Okay.
we arrest them. They don't have a choice. We will search them without asking them.
Okay.
So sometimes they have a choice, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. And
Yes.
whether you give them a choice or not, whether the police officer gives them a choice or not, depends on the level of suspicion that
Correct.
that surrounds
I
the
would say that's
interaction.
accurate,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Jared?
Just one more quick question. So I'm just I was reading through some of this earlier, and the thing that had caught my eye was the explanation for field interviews, and the for routine interactions, specifically those words that do not rise to the level of investigatory detention or Terry stops. a standard FI card or report shall be completed. Is there somewhere where routine interactions is defined? What I'm getting at, Sylvia, is that I'm just curious because there is no record of the interaction between the officer and Martell Miller. And I assume that there are many interactions that go between the public and the police where there is no record of that interaction being cased. And, of course, bureaucracy being what it is and limiting of police department, if we required every single interaction, I'm sure it would be burdensome to police actually getting on with what they're doing. But at the same time, some of those things are very meaningful to the residents who interact with the police, but have no record of than just this is what what happened to me, and this is just my story. So I'm curious as to what that routine interactions gets defined as. I mean, do we have specific definitions for that?
I do not have a definition of that, but the rest of the sentence, they do not rise to the level of investigatory detention.
Right.
And that's where the bottom green box comes into play. So to a police officer, they understand what investigatory detention is. So things that are less than that, things that don't rise to that level, is what they're referring to as a routine interaction. So if you're doing a park detail and you go and you speak to many citizens while you're doing the park detail, for instance, I mean, that's is unrealistic, obviously, for us to document that, and people would be offended if I just was speaking to you, hey, how you doing? You enjoying the music they're playing in the park and that sort of thing. If I were then to say, well, now I have to write your name down because I talked to you, I mean, that would be very intrusive on that person just having, a very benign conversation with the police officer. I mean, we encourage officers to get out and talk to people and do those sorts of things as a, being more community relation focused. So, so there's many of those types of interactions that are not ever documented for those reasons.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Bill?
Yeah, so when one of these is generated and a stop sheet is filled out, does that also generate a record that would come up if the same person was stopped again a month later and the officer entered their name in a computer to do a background check, or
it would show up in the records management system. So if I
would
were
show
to
up
stop
that-
you and I give you a card, then a month later another officer stops you and they look your name up in the records management system, it would show that, yes, you had an interaction with me a month previously.
Okay. It's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking it through how that would work. I mean, if they check off actions indicative of engaging in a drug transaction, and then after talking to them for a while, they find out it was innocent or something, then a month later they stop the same person, and it pops up that, a month ago they were stopped because it was indicative of engaging in a drug transaction. It seems like it almost would let somebody jump to an early conclusion or something.
So it's a little different than, it would show that you had interaction with me. All of the in-depth data wouldn't necessarily be on the screen visible to the police officer. I mean, they could go through a series of queries to try to get it, which is not what's happening when they're on the street. So they would look your name up, they would see that you interacted with me last month, and that, basically I filled out an FI card or something, whatever the case may be, and that's all the data they would necessarily have. And it's not the same as showing you as being arrested for something or being an offender in something. It is a more, it's called a other. You're an other because you, for whatever reason we were talking to you, it became, it didn't raise to that level. So you wouldn't be earmarked as an offender or something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And just, I guess, for purpose of the second sheet of that is kind of the shorter version of that first page that we had there. So it's kind of just a shortened version of the flow chart, I guess. I just included it so you had everything.
Are these an electronic version as well?
Yeah, I do have an electronic version. I did
Okay.
put one with everybody's
everybody's
seat
seat,
there
yeah.
so they could get it in their information, but I could.
We could include it
give
with the
a-
meeting archive online.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
that'd be great. Any other reports of officers? Okay. I had two items I wanted to share. One is that there's going to be a change in the way the Champaign-Urbana International Humanitarian Awards are made. For the past 15 years, Champaign-Urbana have hosted these awards to recognize residents and organizations that make really significant contributions to international causes. And for a variety of reasons this year, including critical vacancies in staff positions and really kind of the way our community has changed, we decided to join with the CU Immigration Forum and the University YMCA, and they're going to be hosting the Immigrant Welcome Awards ceremony and celebration in September 23rd, and we're going to include the International Humanitarian Award celebration with that group. So it basically, I think it expands the base, it expands our reach, and is a more inclusive way to recognize the wonderful things that people are doing in our community. So the Immigration Award, or the Humanitarian Awards celebration will be held. It will just be incorporated into a bigger event. And again, that'll be September 23rd, and we'll have more information regarding nominations and details about the event very soon. And then the other is I wanted to give you an update on the city administrator search. On July 12th, we issued an RFP to retain an executive search firm to conduct the administrator search. The deadline for submission of proposals was July 31st. We received 4 proposals. The 4 firms include GovHR USA, located in Northbrook, Illinois, Harvard Group International in Marietta, Georgia, Springstead Waters with a regional branch in Lake Zurich, Illinois, and Slavin Management, located in Norcross, Georgia. I've selected staff members from Human Resources, Human Relations, and Legal to assist in the evaluation of the proposals. That evaluation process will be complete, hopefully, well, we plan to have it complete by the last week of August, and then I'll let you know the vendor that was selected. Then the search firm will actually guide the process for updating the job description for city administrator. The description in our city code is very old and needs to be expanded and updated. We will develop a candidate profile, and the search firm will then be responsible for recruiting a pool of qualified candidates. In September, I'm going to be assembling, or by September, we will have assembled an advisory committee that will include representatives from all city departments, the 3 bargaining units, city council, community stakeholders, to provide input and advice during the process. And we're still working out the structure for all that, but I intend to be open and transparent during this entire process and to get as much feedback as we can. So stay tuned. This is the first of many updates, and I want to make sure you get regular information about this process. But I'm pleased with the proposals that we've received, and I think we'll find a firm that will meet our needs to conduct this very important search. So next up, new business. We have some appointments to boards and commissions. Can we do these all at once, Charlie? Each set. So these are appointments. We'll do the appointments first. So these are new appointments to the Design Review Board with a term to end June 30th, 2019. Mary Pat McGuire is a resident of the city of Urbana for the last 3 years and currently is an assistant professor of landscape architecture. Her current research activities and projects are focused on urban green infrastructure, urban surface design for permeability, stormwater management design, and she's been a very active member of the West Urbana neighborhood, and is very interested in contributing in this way. An appointment to the Plan Commission is Nancy Wadrago. She's been a resident of the city of Urbana for the last 2 years, and she's currently an extension specialist in community and economic development at the U of I. And for the Human Relations Commission, I recommend appointment of Lolita Dumas. She's been a resident of the city of Urbana for the last 21 years. She's a therapist providing counseling. She has a master's degree in social work. She's served in social services since 1997. Is there a motion for approval? Bill?
I'll move approval of the mayoral appointments to those 3 boards and commissions.
Second.
Motion moved by Bill, seconded by Eric. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion passes. And as far as reappointments to boards and commissions, we have one, that's Samuel Bindum to the Human Relations Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2020. And Sam is Director of Adult Ed for with District 116.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Eric, seconded by Bill. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. And last on the agenda is ordinance amending the Urbana City Code Chapter 2, Section 2-24, and this is a slight correction to a ordinance that was approved a couple of weeks ago. Jim?
I think Assistant City Attorney Borman's memo describes the reason. Essentially, while we appreciate the desire to select how your titles are referred to, when initially referencing the form of government we have between the Illinois Municipal Code and case law, there's no such thing as alderperson. That is not how it's referred, or council member. It's referred to aldermanic mayor or mayoral aldermanic form. That's our particular form of government, and it's governed by Article 3.1 of the Illinois Municipal Code. So that's the primary change. The second change deals with referencing the composition of the council. And again, we have to go back to how the Illinois Municipal Code refers to you all. These 2 changes will in no way affect the rest of the ordinance, which allows you all to refer to each other and the rest of the world to refer to you as alderperson, alderwoman, alderman, or council member.
So basically, this affects one sentence regarding composition, and that's the city operates under the mayor aldermanic form of government. That's the first
Which I
change.
believe is basically the first section.
That's the first sentence
that
of
part
Section
the code,
2-24.
And then this comes later.
And then the city council shall consist of the mayor and 7 aldermen, elected for 4-year terms as provided by state law.
Correct, because of Section 3.1-40-5.
Is there a motion to, are we passing an entirely new ordinance?
I didn't hear you.
Are we passing an entirely, is this ordinance replacing the one we passed?
It is identical to the one you passed with the 2 changes referenced in the memo.
Okay, so this is an amendment. So we're asking for a motion to amend Urbana City Code, Chapter 2, Section 2-24.
I'll make the motion.
Was that Dean?
Yes.
I'll second.
Moved by Dean, seconded by Jared. Any further discussion? I hope not. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. All those in favor, or do we need a roll call?
Please.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Hazen.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before this council, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.